Okay, so finally, let's do something more interesting than installing the Symphony. So in this video we'll create our sections. They basically hold all of the data that we're interested in. So for that I have created the plan. And as you can see, we have several sections here. The first one is the flower, tags, transactions, and inquiries. So, flower have name, price, description, gallery, and it also has tags. And flower can be featured, and it can also be published. So we will not show unpublished flowers on the front end. We will show only published, and on the home page we'll only show featured flowers, etc. So tags only have name, and transactions have a date on which the flower was purchased and the flower that was purchased on the date. And then we have inquiries, so those are basically messages from users that are contacting us through our contact form, and they should enter their name, surname, email, phone, message that they are actually sending, and possibly an attachment, a file that they can upload to our server. Okay, so let's start with the flower section. Let's go to our sections, or here. Actually, I'm already in the section, but never mind. Let's create a new one, and we will create a flowers section, like so. Now, a handle can be left empty. It will be automatically generated from the name, but if you need something custom, you can input it here, something like this. Of course, don't use special characters in the handle or spaces. They should be replaced by, if you have something like this, then you should turn that into CCC or something similar, and spaces should be converted to dashes. Now, navigation group, we'll see later what this is for. Also some of these settings, I'll also show this later. And for now, let's create a field that will hold the name of our flower. So we have text input. Let's add this, and we'll call this a name. Handle again can be left empty, and we don't have any validation rule. So here we can define whether we want to store numbers, emails, or URLs in this field. And let's make this a required field, because this is kind of essential field for our flower. It has to have a name. Okay, so let's create another field for price, like so. And this time we'll choose a validation rule to be a number. Of course, feel free to explore all these options here, play a little bit with the interface and see what you can make. So we have price, description. Let's add a text area this time, so this will be kind of a larger field. This is essentially a text field, and text area is a little bit larger field that will hold our content. It's more appropriate for writing paragraphs and stuff like that. Description, this is also a required field, and notice that here displaying entries tables is not checked, so we'll also see later what this means. Just keep it in the back of your head that we have not checked display in entries table for description. And we also have some text formatter option here that we'll take a look at later. Okay, so what else do we have here? We have gallery. We'll skip this for now because we'll use an extension for that. Tags, we have not created a text section, so we can't really add any tags here. Then we have featured and published, and for that we can use checkboxes. So let's select a checkbox field, and let's see if it's published. Okay, and let's check this by default. We will not make this a required field. And placement is in the sidebar, so take a note of that. We'll see what this means in a second. So the other checkbox should be featured, and let's also make it checked by default. Okay, so now that we are done with our section, let's create it. And you can edit this section anytime you want, so it's not a big deal. Okay, and as you can see, we have our navigation group here, and since we have created a new section in this navigation group, then we have got a new menu up here. So content, flowers. So let's see what we have here. At the moment, nothing, but let's create a new flower. And as you can see, we have a nice little form generated for us. So we have essentially defined what data we want to store in our database. Okay, so let's continue building our sections. Let's create another section. Create new, and this time we'll create tags. So let's call this tags. Also, let's move this to another navigation group like meta or something, because it's not really the main content of the page. Of course, you can name this any way you like. So I'll just call this tag name, actually name, and validation rule nothing. Make this a required field, and that's essentially the only field that we'll have to create here. So let's create a section. Okay. Next we have transactions, so let's create another section. Transactions, and we can leave this in the content, and now we need to choose the date field, so let's choose it. So this will be date of the transaction, placement, let's just leave it in the main content. And we can also set the default date, which is now. Let's make this a required field, and let's also make it to show the calendar, so that we can pick the date from a nice date picker. And we also need to choose the flower. Okay, so let's use select box for this, because we will need to search for our flower that we want to choose. We cannot use a text box or something like that. And let's place this in the main content as well. So flower. Now we can. This is select box, regular HTML select box, so we can define some static values here, like so, separate them by commas. But we will use dynamic values, so we can draw values from other sections. So this is very useful. Now we can just take a name of a flower, and it will be displayed. It will be displayed for us when we want to create a new transaction. And we can also allow selection of multiple options. We'll not do this. We can only select one flower. So let's also display associations in interest table. You will see that as well. And let's make this a required field. Yes. Okay. And this is essentially all for this section, and let's create the last section, inquiries. So let's go create another. I don't want to type this, so let's just put it here. Let's put it in the meta, and as you can see, as we add a new navigation groups, a little helpful tags appear at the bottom that we can just click, so that we don't have to retype everything. Okay, so every inquiry needs a name, surname, email, phone, whatever. Okay, so we'll just use text field for that. Name, required. Let's add another one. Surname. Okay, so I've just quickly created a couple of fields here, and the only interesting thing that happened is in the email I just clicked email, so that we get a regex rule here for email. And finally we also need a file upload field, so let me just show you this. Now here we can just name it attachment, like so, and placement sidebar. Okay, and here we can choose directory we wanted to save our files in. So this directory, you can find it here in your Symphony installation. So it starts from workspace, and now we can just create another directory called files, or maybe attachments. where we will store all the attachments that are sent by our users. So let me just quickly create this section, and then we'll change this because we need to refresh the page. And if we look now, we can see attachments folder here. Okay, and we can also set the validation rule. Of course, be very careful. You should probably set set some kind of permissions on the attachments directory, because if someone uploads PHP script or something like that in your attachments folder, then you know you can get hacked pretty easily. So this will not be required. Okay, and let's save changes, and that should be all from our sections. Now we only need to add tags and gallery to our flower. Let's add tags now. So we can go to flowers, and this is where we view items of a section, but we can also quickly edit this section that we are currently viewing. So let's add another field for tags. We'll use select box, add field, and we'll call this tags, and we will allow selection of multiple options, and we'll choose dynamic values from the tags. Okay, display associations in entry table, and blah 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 blah. Okay, that's all. So I'll just quickly create a couple of entries so that we can play with them. Okay, so I've just created some basic data that we can play with. As you can see, I've created several tags, and I've created one flower so far. So it's an orchid, and if we open it, we can see that it has name, price, it has description, whether it's published or not, and we can choose tags that this flower is related to. Okay, so let's try to create another transaction so that we can see that as well. Let's create a new transaction, and it's currently set to the current date, so we can choose whatever, and then we choose the orchid. It's currently the only flower. Let's create entry. Okay, and let's view transactions. Okay, so let's take a quick look at association interface. Is it? Take note of this column over here. So it says that it has one relation in transaction, so that it means that something in transactions is linking to this specific entry in our flowers. So if we click this link, then we will get all of the entries that are related to our flower orchid, but it's currently just one transaction, so it's not very interesting. Okay, so at the moment we don't have a field where we can upload our images for the gallery, and also this description field looks very ugly. We probably want an editor here so that user can write more comfortably and kind of see what the final result will be. And for that we will need some extensions, and we will discuss them in the next video.